I was born in 1971 and turned 51 just over a month ago. For all of the years that I have been aware, Roe versus Wade and the guarantee of safe and legal abortion has been the guiding law of the land. Though it has never felt fully secure, this right has been bedrock for almost 50 years. I spent my entire reproductive years knowing that if I needed to, I could access abortion services and make the choice I needed for my own well-being and the well-being of my family. I've not had an abortion, but I have had moments when I wondered whether that would be a choice I would need to make. I've had friends and loved ones who have had abortions. I have had multiple miscarriages, and because of that, twice had surgery that many see as related to abortion care. Through it all, I have trusted in this right set out in the 1973 Roe versus Wade decision and affirmed in the 1992 case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. This guarantee is not something that my mother's or grandmother's generation had, and it is looking like it is not something my children's generation will have either. Though the draft of the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade was leaked in early May, giving us some warning of what was to come, I still found the news on Friday of the final decision to be a shock. I'm only beginning to process my thoughts and feelings and know only that it will mean significant changes, both foreseeable and not, around our entire country. There are people in our community who have been working for decades, since before Roe versus Wade was decided, for the reproductive rights of all people. There are people in our community who are just or not yet at the beginning of their reproductive years, for whom these issues have a particular urgency. And for many, even many who are strongly pro-choice, abortion is a complex moral issue that calls not for sound bites and the drawing of bright lines, but rather for nuanced understanding and the delicate balance of competing goods. Whatever our relationship with this issue, this is a challenging time. How do we live with and work through all that we are feeling? How do we put this in the context of our commitments to working for love and justice? How do we talk to our children and grandchildren about what this means? How do we remain in relationship with those who may be celebrating the events of this week? How do we balance the need to recommit ourselves to the work for reproductive justice when so much else in the world continues to call us for our efforts? And how do we remain hopeful in the face of what feels to so many of us as an enormous step backward? I wish I had the answers to these questions. For even one of these questions, I don't. What I do have is a deep conviction that we are living in these questions together, and that it is together that we will find our way through. Unitarian Universalism is a religious faith, not a political movement. It is important to acknowledge and honor that difference. You do not need to hold to any specific perspective on the issues of our world to be a Unitarian Universalist. We are here not to support any particular political party or ideology, but rather to wrestle together with the deepest questions of meaning and value. It is not a set of beliefs either religious or political, that draw us together, but a commitment to love, to learning, to connection, to the possibility of making the world a better place for everyone who is a part of it. Though we do not always live up to our own ideals, at our best, we move through the world with humility and hope, knowing that we will not always get it right, but continually renewing our commitment to try to answer the call of love in all that we do. That said, the General Assembly of Unitarian Universalist Congregations, which, as I mentioned before, is meeting this week in Portland, Oregon, and meets annually, regularly approves statements of social witness and calls on congregations to study and act on pressing issues in our world. Though these statements and suggested actions cover a wide range of topics, the hope is that they are always grounded in our deepest values of interdependence, the inherent worth and dignity of all people, the centrality of the democratic, small d, process, and a commitment to freedom and inclusion. Sometimes the process is controversial, other times it is not. We don't always get it right, but it is our best attempt to speak and act on the challenges our world faces. The first time the General Assembly made an official statement about abortion was in 1963, 2 years after the merger of the Universalist Church of America and the American Unitarian Association, and 10 years before Roe versus Wade was decided by the Supreme Court. That statement read as follows: whereas we as Unitarian Universalists are deeply concerned for dignity and rights of human beings, and whereas the laws which narrowly circumscribe or completely prohibit termination of pregnancy by qualified medical practitioners are an affront to human life and dignity, and whereas these statutes drive many women in the United States and Canada to seek illegal abortions with increased risk of death, while others must travel to distant lands for lawful relief, be it therefore resolved that the Unitarian Universalist Association supports enactment of a uniform statute making abortion legal if, 1, there would be a grave impairment of the physical or mental health of the mother, 2, the child will be born with a serious physical or mental defect, 3, pregnancy resulted from rape or incest, 4, there exists some other compelling reason, physical, psychological, mental, spiritual, or economic. In 1968, the General Assembly put forth an even stronger statement. Be it resolved that the 1968 General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association urges that efforts be made to abolish existing abortion laws, except to prohibit performance of an abortion by a person who is not a duly licensed physician, leaving the decision as to an abortion to the doctor and their patient. Since that time, the General Assembly has approved 5 additional formal social witness statements in support of abortion access, along with countless other efforts to work for full reproductive rights for all people. I share this with you not to say that in order to be a Unitarian Universalist, you need to be active in the ongoing fight for reproductive rights, or that there is only one correct way to think about these issues, but rather to illustrate how a commitment to abortion access and freedom of choice is grounded in our deepest values and has been a part of our religious organization for decades. I share this with you so that we may place ourselves in history and in community with those of our faith, some of whom are no doubt here with us today, who have been committed to these issues since before many of us were born. I share this with you so that you may be heartened by the knowledge that you are not alone. Part of the devastation of this moment comes from our awareness that those who will be most immediately and most significantly hurt by this ruling are those who are already struggling. Women and transgender men of color, people living in poverty, those whose access to health care is already limited by distance and other factors. I read multiple stories on Saturday about women in waiting rooms of abortion clinics on Friday morning who were told that the procedure was no longer available and they would have to go home. Can you imagine? We know that for now, at least, those with means and privilege will continue to be able to access abortion services, even if they have to travel significant distances to do so. So will those lucky enough to live in states that continue to protect the right to abortion. But that leaves a lot of people who will find themselves without a choice that has been a part of our national commitment for half a century. Friday's Supreme Court decision is also devastating because it is the first time when the court has taken away a long-established right. The first time it is curtailing freedom rather than expanding it. This raises the question of whether other seemingly settled rights are next. As Mary Boinato, the Civil Rights Project Director at GLAAD, writes in the New York Times, this decision signals a possible retreat from the court's bedrock constitutional duty to declare and protect our rights. It tees up some constitutional rights as matters for states to decide, at a time when some states are trying to limit voting access. Submitting basic rights to votes and elections imperils those rights and introduces uncertainty about our protections as we cross state lines. How do we contend with that possibility? First, know it is okay to be devastated, to be angry, to be heartbroken, to be afraid. It is okay to feel paralyzed for the moment. To a greater or lesser degree, all of us need to sit with our reactions before we can figure out where to go from here. This is one reason we gather together, to hold each other, sometimes literally, at times like these, to receive comfort and to offer it as well, to cry or yell or pray or sing or sit in silence together. In that togetherness is the start of what we need to move forward. Denise Levertov, in the poem Hillary read earlier, writes, Don't say there is no water to solace the dryness at our hearts. I have seen the fountain springing out of the rock wall and you drinking there, and I too, before your eyes, found footholds and climbed to drink the cool water. Don't say there is no water. That fountain is there among its scalloped green and gray stones. It is still there and always there with its quiet song and strange power to spring in us up and out through the rock. That fountain, that source of comfort and life and hope is here in this gathered community. It is in the generations of Unitarian Universalists who have worked toward the rights of women and of all people to be able to live their lives fully and in freedom. It is in the millions of people in our country and throughout the world who share in that commitment. In this moment, stop and drink from that fountain. Allow yourself to be comforted, to find solace for the dryness of your heart. Take the time you need. And then decide how you will move forward. There are countless things that can be done. Contribute to a provider of abortion services or an organization that helps people access those services. Work in support of voting rights around the country. Find ways to help expand comprehensive sexuality education so that everyone has the tools they need to make the best choices they can. Speak up for legislation that supports children and families so that every child in our country has a safe place to live, enough food to eat, and the opportunity to learn and grow without fear and in love. Write to your representatives, march in the streets, talk to your children, educate yourself. You don't have to do it all. You can't do it all. But if you do one thing, and I do one thing, and we all do something, we will make a difference. We are not going to fix this tomorrow, or next week, or even next year. But there is great power in our commitments, great power in our togetherness, great power in our love. Keep in your heart the words of Holly Near that the choir sang this morning. I am open and I am willing. To be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting in my family. There is sorrow in my town. There is panic in the nation. There's a wailing the whole world round. I am open. I am willing. To be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May it be so. Amen.